When I was young and hadn't really traveled anywhere, New Zealand was a place that existed only in my mind, like Tatooine or Atlantis. It was this jewel sitting at the bottom of the world, shiny and mysterious and totally out of reach. I really wanted to visit, but it might as well have been on the moon, because I didn't know how to make that happen. And despite it being a part of Polynesia, it just seemed much more exotic than Hawaii. It was tropical and jungly, but it also had huge areas of snow and ice, and penguins. I couldn't get my head around it. And although I'd never been there, I've always felt that it was a part of me. Somehow this place had managed to do more than get under my skin. My pre-adult brain seemed to have formed a bond with a place that I only knew from books, songs, and daydreams. New Zealand has had such a profound impact on my life, both as a tattoo artist and a Polynesian. One of my favorite bands when I was a kid was from the North Island, and that alone was enough to make me want to go there. A lot of time has passed since then, and my understanding of New Zealand has grown, and so has my curiosity. Now that I finally have a chance to see it for myself, it feels less like discovering something new, and more like visiting an old friend that I have yet to meet. Welcome to Te Ika Maui, the North Island of New Zealand. I'm Roland Tattoo. I'm a tattoo artist and author from the Big Island of Hawaii. Tattoo is my life, but my passion is to travel. Wherever I go, I like to check out the tattoo culture and talk to artists and collectors that love tattoo as much as I do. Join me as I tattoo my way around the world. It's a big place and there's a lot to see. Take a trip with me, the TattooNomad. I can't believe that I'm finally here in the land of the long white cloud. My life went down a completely different track than I thought it would when I was younger. Back then I wanted to be a fighter pilot or a car designer, but those things meant more school, and that wasn't going to happen. I found out in college that you can't skip the homework and come in on Friday and ace the test and have everything be good. So this visit brings some strange kind of completeness to it all, in terms of who I thought it would be then and who I am now. Tattoos have always been a part of my life since I could remember. My dad, my uncles, cousins, my grandparents, they all had tattoos. I would draw Sharpie tattoos on anyone within arm's reach. I drew tattoos on my shoes and clothes. I would read my dad's Easy Riders cover to cover, soaking up all the ham-fisted jailhouse tattoos and airbrushed art that I could. But despite all of this, and people telling me that I should become a tattoo artist, I just never really considered it. It was kind of like how I saw New Zealand. Right there, almost within reach, but I just couldn't figure out how to make it a reality. So I forgot about it and did what I could to earn money. I delivered flowers, spun pizza, waited tables, pumped gas. I delivered exotic cars, I printed skateboard wheels, sold illustrations, and worked as a graphic designer. Eventually, I had my own multimedia design firm, and I did corporate identity and animation, but none of that really satisfied me. Then one day, 13 years ago, the tattoo gods reached down and slapped some sense into me, and I started tattooing. I was 34 at the time. I left my high-tech corporate job, trading more money for a better quality of life, and I was at a crossroads. Of all the careers that I've had, becoming a tattoo artist just felt right. Like everything that I had done so far led me to this point in time. I was beginning to finally understand how to make it all happen. So to be here now, at this point in time in my life, I really couldn't ask for anything more. No one really knows when the first people came to New Zealand. According to Maori oral history, first arrivals came from Tahiti, the Marquesas, and a place called Hawaiki. Legend has it that a Maori explorer named Kupe was the first to reach New Zealand by voyaging canoe over 1,000 years ago. Like I've said before, Polynesia is a pretty big place. New Zealand sits at the bottom, with Hawaii sitting at the northern tip, and Easter Island completing the eastern part of the triangle. There are over 1,000 islands that fit into this area, and because of the close relative distance between them all, this created what I like to think of as a washing machine of Polynesian culture, that for the most part spun around and around, dispersing slowly throughout the Pacific. The result of this spin cycle migration was a commonality of language, creation myths, and culture. Each respective region went on to evolve its own unique lifestyle, but retained its ties to nature and celebration of heritage as a common thread. The practice of tattoo was one activity that was sustained throughout all of Polynesia. But the Maori approached this craft in a very unique way. There is no record for when the practice of tattoo was introduced into their culture, and there are no references of how the custom of moko originated. Native tradition has it that before going into battle, the earliest settlers would cover their faces with designs using charcoal, and that the moko evolved from that as a way to make the markings permanent. Ta moko was mainly placed on the face and on the area from the knees to the waist, on both men and women. Although women were tattooed to a lesser extent than men, and were also tattooed on the lips and chin, believing that the lips should be full and blue. The moko was more than just an intimidation device. It contained a wealth of information, such as social status, lineage, profession, position in life, marriages, and most importantly, personal signature. All of this was important not only because of social hierarchy and pedigree, but because it also helped to identify people if they became decapitated in battle. Tattoo was also used to distinguish the noble or free man from the slave, since slaves generally weren't tattooed. And, like much of Polynesia, tattoo was regarded as supernatural and a form of communication with the spirit world. Lineage and ancestral pedigree, which is the basis for much of early Polynesian tattoo, was information that was carved onto seafaring canoes so that it traveled with families wherever they went. When they began to settle onto islands, leaving the nomadic life behind, that information was transferred from the canoe to the home and then eventually the skin. The home symbolized the body of the oldest ancestor. The ridgepole was the spine, the rafters were the ribs, and the front porch area were the arms outstretched. The importance of carving this information onto wood, at first onto the canoe and then onto the home, created an uninterrupted account of one's past. Then, by tattooing that information onto the skin, the art became its own living entity that linked one's possessions with its respective owner. This chain of information validated and justified a person's mana, accrued over many generations, and helped to establish and preserve their place in society. The North Island is big. I have to drive for hours to get anywhere. I could drive around the entire big island of Hawaii in as much time as it takes me to get about a fifth of the way around this one. I'm not complaining, but driving on the other side of the road and the other side of the car isn't something I'm going to miss when I get back home. Plus, I keep getting attitude from all the locals. I'm on my way now to Rotorua to visit a ta moko artist and hear some of his thoughts on tattoo and being an artist here in New Zealand. Hira Young has been practicing his craft here in Rotorua for almost 2 decades and is an accomplished ta moko artist.
My name's Hira Young. I've been tattooing for 17 years now. Started off doing Maori wood carving apprenticeship, and from there progressed to the ta moko style. At first I didn't want to be a tattoo artist. I wanted to do wood carving. That's what I enjoyed doing. And I would be carving all day, every day, and then it went to night times doing tattoos, and then tattooing got busier and busier, and now it's switched around where I'm tattooing every day and just doing carvings in the weekends. Yeah, so it's completely changed around now, and there's just more demand for the tā moko. The time you put into carving, it might take 6 weeks to do a carving, and then it might take 6 weeks to sell it. Whereas tā moko is just instant. You can do it on that same day and get paid on that same day. In the last 10 years, it's really come about, but before that, in the 90s, there was no one doing tā moko. The old guys from the Institute who graduated back in the 70s, they were just researching the patterns and everything back then, and then starting to show other people back then in the 90s. But if you tried to get tā moko done in the 90s, early 90s, there was no one that could do it. Just Pākehās in the tattoo shops, and they didn't really know anything about Maori tattoos. But now, these days, you'll see a tā moko shop on every street corner. Yeah.
I asked him if he felt this had diluted tā moko in any way.
Yeah, it has, and the names of patterns have. We got a lot of tourists coming in with certain designs that they've seen in other places and telling us this means this and I want this on my body, and you just got to tell them, no, it doesn't actually mean that, it means something else, and if you want something to mean this, then I need to draw you something else up. People from other countries that don't know our culture and the names of things and where we get our patterns from, I think they change it to suit them. They make up a name that suits them more, instead of the real name of what it is and where it came from. They'll just say this is for travelling. So all travellers and tourists that come in saying they want this pattern because it represents this, travelling, and that's what they were told in France or Germany. So there's a lot of people tattooing around the world that are giving false information about what our patterns and culture is. So when they come in here, I set them straight. They Google Maori tattoos, Polynesian stuff comes up, Marquesas stuff, Tahitian stuff comes up. So they download all those pictures and they bring them in here saying, I want a Maori tattoo and I want this one. So you've got to explain to them the difference between Polynesian, Maori, Tahitian, Marquesas, and then they get a better understanding,
Then I asked for his thoughts on the future of tā moko.
It's always changing. Tā moko was originally just traditional patterns and things that we used, but like when the English came here, they brought metal with them, so the Maoris adapted. They left the bone chisels behind and they moved to the steel chisels, and that's what we're doing today. We're using needles now. As far as the art goes, there's a lot of good artists out there and they're mixing all genres together, which is cool. It's got to move forward. It will move forward, and that's just the evolution, I suppose. Yeah.
Hira offered to show off his tā moko and break it down for me. For him to share this was truly special and a highlight of my trip.
Well, the top here, there's a space in between here somewhere. That's the river. The triangle is my mountain. Then on each side I've got grandparents, grandfather on one side and grandmother on the other side, as tanifas, as manaia symbols. The spiral represents the dawn of time. Okay, so we had the earth and the sky was once joined together. As they got pushed apart and separated, it made that spiral. So this is the break of dawn, the beginning of time. So that spiral goes on the cheeks there. Down the bottom I've got two of my ancestors watching my back, one on this side and one on this side. And now on this side, I've got my birth mother, Taranaki, round eyes. There's the nose, there's the mouth. Round eyes, same patterns on the carving here. On this side is my mother that brought me up, Charoa, different shaped eyes. She's from here, around Rotorua area, Ngāti Pikeo. So that's my mother that brought me up. All these down here are my brothers and sisters from my Te Arawa side. And all these down here are my brothers and sisters from my Taranaki side. And all these are their children. All these korus in here all represent their children. And also I was adopted out when I was younger. So for me, these is like the umbilical cords just floating on the water. So my tamoko is based on mātua whāngai, which is adoption, being adopted out. And then I have other little symbols that represent things, like my canoe is the Aotea canoe. So these little notches here are the pūkiko's footprints. The Aotea canoe is the canoe that brought the pūkiko to New Zealand. So that's why I put those in there. Got the eel here, representing the tree of life. The coconut trees all come from the head of the eel. So there's the coconut tree with the frond just growing out of it there. Got Hawaii, Easter Island, New Zealand, Pacific Triangle. It's all through here.
Wow, how long did that take?
Oh, I think it was about 60 hours all up.
Good God.
60 hours, yeah.
After I left his shop, I ran into a client of mine that lives here in New Zealand half the year and on the Big Island the other half. Phil's a great guy, and it was really nice to catch up with him and see a familiar face so far from home. I have to admit that so far New Zealand hasn't been so easy to understand, not in the way that I thought it would be. I thought it would be similar to Hawaii in both culture and landscape, but so far it's proven to be quite the opposite. In fact, when people hear that I'm from Hawaii, they react like I'm from some exotic faraway land. I mean, isn't New Zealand an exotic faraway land? Apart from meeting with Hira, I can't say that I've experienced an openness with the culture, and that's totally unexpected. In Hawaii, for better or for worse, we tend to wear our culture on our sleeve. You feel it the moment you step off the plane, and it hangs in the air like the smell of summer rain on the sea. But to me, it feels like the culture is somewhat disjointed and purposely hidden over here. Like it wants to bust out and show itself, but it's being held back for some reason. Just when I think the connection is being made, something changes that I can't put my finger on, and then the feeling is gone. It's not a negative thing by any means. It's just confusing and perplexing, and honestly I'm surprised by it every time it happens. Maybe it's just me, and I'm going crazy from driving on these insane roads. I don't know. We ran into a Maori elder, who is the caretaker of this marae in one of the very few non-commercial villages in the North Island. She was friendly at first, and she thought I was Maori and began speaking to me in her language. But she soon noticed that we had a bunch of gear, and she figured out pretty quick that I wasn't from New Zealand, and her tone changed, and she started to question what we were doing. I told her that we wanted to film some of the carvings in tiki, and she did not like that idea at all. We hadn't set up any equipment, and there weren't signs saying that we couldn't film, but it was clear that she wasn't going to let that happen. There were other visitors there, taking pictures and stepping all over the cordoned off areas of the marae, and she would chase some of them away, but really there were just so many. She finally stopped and said, "This is what I'm upset about. They just don't care." Her main concern was appropriation and exploitation of her culture, which is a subject that I deal with pretty much every day at my shop, and with people who contact me from all over the world asking about Polynesian tattoo. This is a difficult subject because on one hand, I believe and wholeheartedly support the importance of retaining cultural identity and practices. This is often knowledge that has had to be relearned or rediscovered, and in many parts of Polynesia, that's exactly what's happening today. The pain of the past and the reality of modern life collide, and it's hard to reconcile. Then, on the other hand, I want to share my culture and art with the world. I believe that if it's done correctly, it can help to further protect it by making people aware of what it is, and the importance of preserving it. But not everyone shares this view, and even when I first published my book on Polynesian tattoo, there are some people that didn't want me to share this information with the world at all. I get it. After I told her what we were doing with TattooNomad, and that I was a tattoo artist from Hawaii, and I completely understood her concern and outlook on cultural preservation, her attitude changed, and she was very welcoming. This experience would manifest itself in varying degrees throughout my trip. I would eventually learn that this was a thing I couldn't put my finger on. Ancient Maori culture had many facets, and moko was just one of them. Moko is arguably the most recognizable form of Polynesian tattoo, and the use of the koru has become a go-to motif in much of modern Polynesian tattoo. And because of this, New Zealand has established itself as an indispensable contributor of Polynesian tattoo culture. There's more than just moko here in New Zealand. There are some outstanding artists here, practicing all sorts of different styles of tattoo, and they attract people from all walks of life looking for some unique ink. And here at the annual New Zealand Tattoo and Art Festival in New Plymouth is where we can hope to find them. It's so nice to be at a show and not have to work. Although this show is known to be one of the best on this side of the earth, I'm really happy to be able to just take it all in and enjoy it, rather than working the entire time and missing out. The amount of talent at this convention is staggering, and I have yet to pass by a booth where someone isn't working. Although the tattoo community is relatively small, we're like one big family, and I'm grateful to see some familiar faces in a not so familiar place. I tend to gravitate toward artists who share a similar outlook toward life and their craft as I do. I appreciate genuine people that take pride in what they do, who are grounded and down to earth. I think that surrounding yourself with like-minded people, ones that are positive and enjoying their journey through life, is crucial to having a healthy mindset. The tattoo industry, like many other creative occupations, can be a difficult place to find this balance. I'm forever grateful to have an extended family like this, that I can count on to be real and give their support to a craft that we are all so fortunate to share.
My name's Adrian Wynn. I'm originally from Taranaki, which is where we are right now, up here in New Plymouth. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about the tattoos I've currently got. So the first one is a moko, which is traditional Maori tattoo. And basically it's my whakapapa or my family tree. So the koru patterns, they all represent family members. So like my grandparents, my mother, my brothers, mokopuna, which is the children. So I don't know if you can see all the detail work, but all the panel work, it all represents parts of like in the meeting houses in the marae, like our panel work, you'll see it all on the walls, and you'll see those in the designs. Also for me, because depending which regions you go to, the different tribal areas, they have certain things that represent them. For me being Taranaki, if you ever see any of our culture groups who always have like 3 feathers that represent our areas, and in this tattoo, for example, that's where it's shown. So yeah, all the korus are family, and basically everyone's going to have one that'll be slightly different, and depending what regions you come from, you'll see that they'll look completely different, even though it's still a moko, but depending on what region you're from, they have a completely different look. The other one is actually it's a memorial tattoo for my mother. So basically when she passed away, I felt like I wanted to represent that in some way, but not be like a sad kind of rest in peace sort of thing. So I wanted something bright to celebrate. And I love American traditional, which is why I've got the roses. My mum's name is Rose, which is why I chose roses in the first place. So Whiringa Nuku is Māori for October, which is the month she passed. And I've got 6 roses to represent the 6th day. And then the blue, meaning spirit. So that's like, to me, it represents the final day that she passed. And the red obviously represents love. So that's basically what this tattoo was for. Yeah.
Kia ora, I am Katarana Wallace. I am from Ngāti Raukawa iwi. Taranaki is Te Maunga. I am a house cleaner. On my 30th birthday, I had a few friends of mine, they're part of the Dirtbag Tattooists, take me in to visit a friend and basically said, bring up your drawings. We'll have a kōrero with them, which is just a talk. And turns out they were showing me my tattoos that I designed, which are the ones on my neck for my birthday. I'm a Gemini, so they are the positive, the negative, the light, the dark, the twins, the happy, you know, everything that rolls with that. They were done by a tattooist called Megan Jean here in Taranaki. Recently I got these guys done. They are your chakra reiki symbols. I'm also a rongoa practitioner, which is multi-medicine. I do this obviously to earn cash. It's more about giving to people what I do outside of here. Not a big money maker, but all about the love. Yeah. The motivation for the tattoos on my neck is I was adopted out, whāngai. My biological father, head to toe, jail tattoos. Brilliant to me, not always a good man, but basically it was a salute to him. My first tattoos were actually on my neck, and it was basically a big fat what up to those that didn't have respect for him. And just, yeah, in his memory.
So, the North Island is a complex place. You have to dig deep to find the culture, but it's there when you make the effort. It makes you work hard to understand it, beneath all of its gorgeous geography and prehistoric beauty, and that's not a bad thing. But in Wellington, the largest and southernmost city on the North Island, the culture is kind of hard to spot. It's a college town and has a very modern and urban feel in respect to the rest of the North Island, except for Auckland. New Zealand is a cafe culture, and that's pretty much reflected in all of Wellington. There's hipster boutique eateries and trendy clothing shops all over the place. But one man in particular is doing what he can to make the culture accessible, and has spent much of his tattooing career amassing and archiving information about moko and tattoo in general. His name is Steve Maddock, and he's the curator of the National Tattoo Museum of New Zealand here in Wellington.
I knew I was in the museum in Amsterdam, and I always thought there should be one in New Zealand. Ever since I heard of one over there, I thought, what a great idea. You know, New Zealand's got such a rich history of tā moko and Maori art, etc., that I was surprised there wasn't one in New Zealand. Tattoo art isn't recognised, that may be getting more recognised now as a valuable thing and that, but to me it was always valuable because it's a perishable art, and few arts are perishable. You know, if you paint on a canvas or a door or wood, it's there forever, or as long as it doesn't get destroyed. Whereas when people die, that artwork's lost forever. People always ask, why did you open a museum? I was surprised there wasn't one in the first place. To me, it's like, you know, a painting. Paintings also have a history. They may get stolen or, you know, have somewhat of a history. But when you tattoo a person, they can go off and create their own history. They can rob a bank or run a country or swim a marathon, or, you know, save a life or fucking take a life, you know. People ask about tattooing all the time. Oh, does it mean this and that? You know, it means this and that. It's love and hate. It's religion and anti-religion. It's like everything, and it's such a dedication to something. Like if you get something tattooed onto you, you're dedicated to that. You know, you've gone through pain and paid the price for it. So, you know. I've been working on a virtual reality gallery, and that was my kind of saving grace, because this place, like, I'm paying for stuff to have it in storage because we've moved and downsized considerably. I'd love to have everything out here, and all museums are like that, have the same problem. And like with virtual reality, we developed a system where we can fit everything we've got and then some in there, plus all types of artists and that. So that's been our latest development. And it's a slow development, but I see it as a major benefit for the museum, myself as an artist, Underground Arts as a business. Like it can fit you in there and every artist we know. But there's not a gallery in the world big enough to show these in, let alone sell them. Whereas with the gallery, everyone can carry around my gallery in their phone, in their pocket, and then like you know, if you want to see my art or yours or someone's, and we want to get it to the stage where you can just buy it or purchase it. We kind of focus on those things. But yeah, that's theultimategallery.com, and hopefully it'll be up if you have a look.
Steve has also been kind enough to let me tattoo out of his shop, Underground Arts, which is also located in the museum. My client was on holiday from Canada and heard that I would be in town, so she booked an appointment. All of her tattoos had to do with family, and this one would be no different.
This tattoo is my family's birthdays. Dad, mom, brother, sister. This one says perspective. Just always reminds me that you should always look at things from a different perspective. My cousin and I got this sunshine because whenever we're together, the most fun we have is at the lake in the sun. And this one my sister and I got just cause, and it's banana.
She wanted a heart done in blackwork with some flowers in memory of her grandfather. Blackwork tattoos are similar to old woodcuts and engravings. This type of artwork was created by carving relief images into a woodblock or metal plate and has been around for thousands of years. It's also used extensively when printing text. The ink is then applied evenly to the plate, and a piece of paper or textile is placed over it. When pressure is applied to the paper, the relief image, or the part of the image that was not carved away, will leave an impression on the paper, creating the design or text. This technique doesn't lend itself to producing halftones or gradient shading. Instead, it uses dots or lines in a single, multiple, or cross-hatched arrangement to create contrast. I had a lot of fun doing this tattoo, and it made me think about my own grandfather. And not a day passes when I don't think of him, or catch myself saying something that he said. He was and still is a very important part of my life. Obviously, I wouldn't be here without my ancestors. They lived and died so that I could live my life doing the things that I do. Except for the people that I met that were willing to share knowledge about their culture, it wasn't such an easy thing to step into the world of the Maori. What I did experience from those willing to share, I am truly grateful. I didn't visit any of the commercial villages, and assume that they're a lot like the ones in Hawaii, that capitalize on the culture by showing a snippet of what ancient life might have been like if people were shiny and happy, and didn't have to work the land and sea or wage war on one another in order to survive. But I don't have a problem with this at all. In terms of a cultural renaissance, the journey that the Maori are on is relatively new compared to other parts of Polynesia. It was the policy of the government to assimilate the Maori into Western culture, and such values were what were taught in the native schools. Then in 1930, the government decided to change the policy to allow cultural adaptation. And some aspects of Maori culture, mainly arts, crafts, and music, were allowed into the curriculum. Although, children were often punished for speaking Maori in the classroom, and the language itself was not taught. Tikanya, which are essentially the customary system of values and practices that define social interactions and is the basis of Maori knowledge, was revitalized during this time. It wasn't until an international exhibition of indigenous art called Te Maori in the early 80s changed the attitudes of many Maori toward their own culture and renewed the interest in the multitude of tribes throughout New Zealand to revive and rejuvenate their past practices. This allowed the Maori to present their culture and knowledge to the world themselves. It would no longer stand that others would do it for them, nor define exactly what it was to be Maori. And this is the very good reason why the culture is so jealously guarded. Many people, either intentionally or by pure accident, threaten to steal that away for their own benefit, either by copying carvings or tattoo designs and putting them onto t-shirts and stickers, or worse, onto skin. So I get why the culture is locked away behind wrought iron gates and 6-foot walls. It's just a shame that it has to be, because there's so much here, so much to be seen, and so much to share. To say that my visit to New Zealand was an enlightening experience would be painting with too broad of a brush. I didn't expect it to be so difficult to get a feel for the place. It lures you with its beauty and charms you with its quirks, but it makes you work to appreciate all that it has to offer. Nothing in life that comes easy is worth anything, I've heard it said. The tattoo culture is alive and healthy. There are a lot of people with moko, but that style wasn't at all what defined the place. I saw people of all ages with all kinds of tattoos, and the level of artistry is up there with some of the best I've seen. The land itself is stunning and completely engrossing. It begs you to explore every detail and relish in the conquest if you can endure the process. The wildlife is not like anywhere I've been. I can't remember seeing or hearing so many different types of birds. New Zealand didn't offer itself up easily, and I'm not mad at that. I didn't instantly click with it, and up to my last minutes as I was about to leave, it didn't fail to frustrate me. But I'm not leaving here feeling anything but a profound new respect for this southern Polynesian gem. I decided that it wasn't like an old friend that I had yet to meet. Instead, it was like meeting a relative that I had heard so much about but never known. There can be a lot of expectation of what you want them to be, and it can be shocking when you learn that they might not live up to your preconceived notions. But all of that is my own fault. Because in the end, it's more than camaraderie and shared interests that define the relationship with family. You love your family for all their strangeness and faults, like you would expect them to do for you. Sometimes friends do things that change the dynamic of your relationship, and things are never the same. With family, it's a different story. The blood you share transcends the petty differences that often divide people because you see them as extensions of yourself, and vice versa. Traveling abroad never fails to make me look at myself and my life in a whole different light. I try to become a better person and a better artist by this. And although my expectations of what I thought New Zealand would be was much different from the reality, I didn't expect it to affect me the way that it did. And for that, I will be forever grateful. Aloha. The home itself symbolized the body of the oldest. The home itself symbolized the body of the most ancient ancestor, with the spine being clumsy writing. Who wrote this shit?